Good morning, Attorney Michael Clinkscale. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Nelson. How are you?
We're excellent this morning, and for the folks who are listening to us, Attorney Clinkscale is assigned, or he's the attorney for the young man who was arrested in connection with that shooting in the Brooklyn section of Baltimore. We know the shooting; 30 people got wounded. Two were fatalities. First up, has your client been charged with the shootings?
No, he has not been charged with anything related to the discharge of a weapon, and he certainly hasn't been charged with attempted murder nor murder.
So why are they holding him? Or what are they saying? Why they're holding him?
Well, they do have some handgun charges. They claim that my client, this young man, was in unlawful possession of what they refer to as a rifle caliber handgun, and they have gleaned this information from a video alleging that that is my client that is circulated over various social media platforms. You should note, however, they do not have this alleged weapon, so they are charging him for unlawful weapon possession without actually having the alleged weapon.
Hmm. Was he the young man that's in that widely circulated video that's on social media that was, just pulling a handgun out of a bag or something?
Well, a couple of things I want to say about that video. The state is alleging that that is the young man in that video, and they're also alleging that the person in that video is displaying a rifle caliber handgun, and that display of the rifle caliber handgun led the people at that party to fear and excitement, and therefore he recklessly endangered the lives of those surrounding him at that point in that video.
Wow, that seems like a stretch, though. If he committed those shootings and then somehow he was walking around the crowd with a gun, if from a layman's point of view, it seems like a stretch for those who for arresting him for that. How do you see that? You think they're just trying to get somebody and throw the charges on that person so that the community will be sort of placated?
Well, that's how it appears, Mr. Nelson. As you know, I am not any type of psychic or anything. I can't go directly into their minds, but the law is about evidence and it's about burdens of proof. In any criminal proceeding, the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt, and the state carries that burden. My job, having come into this action after the event, obviously, and after there had been widespread wall-to-wall vilifying of this young man, to speak to the public, the average layman, as you have said, and let them know that the side of the story that they have been told is not the story that they should know.
Right. That's why we have you here this morning to tell us that side of the story, because obviously we're getting one side of the story. That's the official coming from the state agencies who arrested your particular client. But is there anything that ties him to the shooting? Other even if he was, if they can prove he was there, and if they've got a weapon, do they have bullets or anything that ties him to the shooting?
Well, a couple of things. Certainly, they can prove he was there. There's CCTV camera footage of he and some friends arriving. There's also CC camera footage of everyone else who arrived. Interestingly, the video that they have that is circulating on the internet, there's no timestamp on that, so we don't know when that act occurred. But we certainly know, if you look at that video, that not a single person seemed to be at all frightened, at all concerned. However, we also know that when an actual gun made an appearance, people took off, including my client, who, as you may or may not know, was a victim as well. He was shot in his lower left leg by assailants who have not been captured, and he's looking for justice just like everyone else. Now, directly to your question, the only evidence that we know that they have, if you want to consider it evidence, is this so-called social media video.
Wow. 8 after the top there, folks. He's just waking up. I guess he's Michael Clinkscale. He's the attorney representing the young man who was arrested in connection with that shooting in Brooklyn section of Baltimore. And you're saying he was shot as well? So how is the state going to say that what are they trying to say? He shot himself as well as shooting the other folks?
Well, no, they're not saying that. They're saying that there are 3 unknown or unidentified shooters. Now, I want to take you through this because this may be a little complex. I know your audience. I trust your audience. It's filled with very, very intelligent people. So I want to walk through this. They say that 3 unidentified shooters existed. Now, I have to tell you this. My client has been identified. If you're saying that there are 3 unidentified shooters, and you've not charged him with any shooting, then where is the beef, so to say? What are you trying to do by implicating this young man in a mass shooting when you have not alleged that he was a shooter?
So what are they alleging? What are they saying? What have they charged him yet? What are they holding him for? And how long can they do that?
Yes. They've charged him, yes. They've charged him with gun possession infractions. They have charged him with handgun possession by a minor. They've charged him with handgun possession on person. They allege that the gray and white book bag that you see in that video contained a handgun in it, this rifle caliber handgun that I alluded to earlier. So they have him on handgun possession in a vehicle. They have him with assault weapons possession. And finally, they have him on reckless endangerment. Now, note, even if it were true, which we say it's not because my client has told me, and there's been no evidentiary challenge to this, that what he actually had was an Orbeez gun. Some of the older people in the audience may not know what an Orbeez gun is, but certainly a lot of the younger folks do. An Orbeez gun is a toy. It fires these water pellets that cannot kill you. They may sting, but certainly all the kids are playing with those. If you go to YouTube, you'll see Orbeez guns videos everywhere, and they certainly resemble an actual gun. So my client is saying this was a toy, and we have no evidentiary challenge to that.
All right, 11 after the top of the hour. Attorney Clinkscale, did they get have they retrieved the toy gun then?
They have not.
So that's, I guess that's the issue. These charges that he's facing, is he eligible for bail or is it no bail?
Of course, he's eligible for bail, but he's been held without bail because they believe that these charges are sufficient to consider him to be a danger, not to a specific individual, but a danger not to himself, but a danger to the entire community. They say this without possessing the evidence of him actually having a weapon. They also have decided that since he's such a danger to the community and should be held, this is a distinction from the multiple charged defendants who have been charged with crimes as significant as murder, who have been released on bond.
So explain to us, how can the DA sign off on that? Your client has the only thing they can tie him to, that he was there, but they can't tie him to any of the shootings, the gun, the bullets, anything else. How can they not make it a bail? And another question is he being held as an adult or a juvenile?
Well, he's in a juvenile facility, but some of those charged crimes have mandatory adult ramifications, which means that the handgun charges, handgun by a minor, handgun on possession, handgun in vehicle, these are adult charges. What we've done is we filed a motion to have this action transferred to the juvenile court because under Maryland law, it's mandatory that a person who is over the age of 16 who has been charged with these crimes must be tried as an adult. So again, we filed a motion to transfer to the juvenile court because he is a young man, only 17 years old. And again, we have no evidence that he had an actual gun. There's no evidence in the possession of the state to indicate that he had an actual gun. So we're going through with that process now. Now, in terms of your original question, what the state's attorney and others may be thinking, again, if anything that I would say would be speculation. However, if they are willing to come onto your show and speak with your listeners about what is in their mind, that would be quite insightful.
All right. We're going to take a short break and take a look at the traffic and weather in our different cities. Folks, our guest is attorney Michael Clinkscale. He represents a young man who was accused of that mass shooting accused of being involved. Let's put it that way. Got to be real technical these days. Involved in that shooting that took place in Baltimore. 30 people wounded. 2 of them were fatalities. What are your thoughts? Reach out to us at 800-450-7876. Already got a tweet question for the counselor, but we'll do that in 4 minutes after we take a look at the traffic and weather in our different cities. Right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. Also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And good morning again, family. 21 minutes after the top of the hour, on with Baltimore criminal defense attorney Michael Clinkscale. Attorney Clinkscale is representing the young man, the teenager, 17 years old, who is accused in the mass shooting in Baltimore. Again, it seems like the DA having a hard time connecting this young man to the shooting, or the fact that they can prove that he was there. What are your thoughts? 800-450-7876. There's a number to call to speak to the counselor. Let's take Mark on line 1, calling from Baltimore. Mark, you're on with attorney Clinkscale.
Hey, good morning. How y'all doing, gentlemen? Carl, this brother, as we say in Baltimore, he be hooked. Every time I see him on the news, he be hooked. But my thoughts is, since we've been out Brooklyn, even before that happened, and every since, one of our pastors is from out there, Pastor Watt. But his client, it was called Brooklyn Day, and it's been going on for 27 years. And, people trying to, Carl, just put it to the projects, but it was Brooklyn Day. That's a large neighborhood of almost 1,000 people, I guess, out there. So he was on the news, right, with the lady, with the reporter. So the reporter was saying, your client pulled out a gun. He was like, we don't know what it was. And she was like, well, he pulled out a gun. And the lawyer right there said, because, like here in Baltimore, we clowning you a little bit, brother. Us that really we clowning him a little bit, Carl, because his client's right there on tape pulling it out. Why would you be at a festival, pulling out anything, after such things?
All right, that's a good question. Let's give him a chance to respond. That's a good question. Thanks,
all right,
Mark.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mark.
Counselor?
I do appreciate that question, Mark. Now, again, let's take this in context. The 17-year-old young man at a party, enjoying himself foolishly, engaged in various activities, none of which criminal. Again, it is important to understand that what this young man had was a toy. There is no evidence contrary-wise. It is also important to understand that we do not know what hour that video was taken. We know that it certainly came from someone's cellular phone. Now, again, Was that immediately preceding this event? There's no answer. Was this hours before the event? There's no answer. But certainly we know from the circumstances surrounding what we have seen that not a single person in frame seemed concerned at all. And while I certainly appreciate and understand Mark's question here, and it is a very valid and good question, the bigger issue is, did that event lead to something more terrible directly related to the activity of this young man?
Right. So basically, it was can we say the video was of people at that event, or was it somewhere else, or at a different time? Do we know?
We don't know the timing on it. It is alleged to be at the actual event. But again, as I've said earlier, Mr. Nelson, the burden of proof is on the state in this and any other criminal proceeding. So the state will have to prove every single allegation that they've put forward, and that level of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Correct. But they still have not charged him with the actual shooting, though, or the murder.
That is absolutely correct.
Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, yeah, because that's where we at. That's the point. They haven't charged him, and I know the community probably breathed a sigh of relief when they picked up this young man. But he may not be the person who did the crime. So we've got to look at it, with an open mind. Having said that, I got a tweet question for you. Twitter says, "Can you ask the attorney his opinion of Scott Schellenberger's comments of youth not having to speak to the police?"
I actually am not aware of Mr. Schellenberger's comments. Mr. Schellenberger is the state's attorney for Baltimore County. For those of you who aren't aware of the distinction between Baltimore County and Baltimore City, these are different jurisdictions. And to the extent that Mr. Schellenberger has any comment whatsoever, it does not relate to how the city of Baltimore functions.
Gotcha. 800-450-7876. And this shooting that, was got international news, and all of a sudden they found they made an arrest, and everything's sort of quieting down. You have a chance to speak to your client. What's he tell? If you can share with us, because I know there are obviously some things you can't share everything with us. But what is his? How is he doing? All of facing all these charges.
Well, he certainly, I want to talk about the physical effects first, and then I'll get into his mental state, or what appears to be his mental state. Physically, he's in pain. He's a victim. He was shot. There is no doubt about this. He is one of the victims of this crime who was treated at hospital. That's number one. So he's recovering from that. So he's in pain physically. Mentally, he's confused because he knows that what he had was a toy. He also knows that he did no shooting whatsoever, so he's confused as to why he's in this position. But I will say something that I find quite remarkable about this young man. He's a strong young man. He is taking it as well as a person can take it, but he certainly knows that he's not responsible for any of this, including the charges that have been laid against him.
So are they implying that he shot himself and he was one of the 30 people that got wounded? Is that what the state is, or the city is trying to say?
Well, I don't think that they're implying that he shot himself, because that would be a difficult pull, given that he was shot in the back of his leg, and lower left leg at that. I think that what they're trying to say is there were more people involved in shooting at this activity. What it appears, by saying reckless endangerment, is that he caused fright, and that fright may have spilled over into the larger crowd, and then some shooting began.
Gotcha. But if they use that video, though, because you're correct, I saw the video, and I guess the whole world saw that video. People weren't running away from it. They were just milling around. Is that how you view it?
I mean, that's certainly what I saw. And again, I don't want to bore the audience with a bunch of legalese, but if the state is alleging that act, and to this point, this is all we have is that video, that act was an act of reckless endangerment, they must prove those allegations beyond a reasonable doubt.
All right. 30 minutes at the top. I got some folks who want to talk to you. First, let's go to line one. Smitty's calling from Baltimore, has a question or a comment for you. Smitty, you're on with attorney Michael Clinkscale.
Yes. Good morning, Carl. Good morning, Michael Clinkscale. One of the things, this is one of the questions I would like to ask him. But before I get to that call, if I may, I would like to say to this attorney, I appreciate what he's doing as far as making the state bring the evidence forth, because of what happens is most of these young boys, because they don't have proper representation, that the state has been able to pin anything that they want on them and get away with it. This attorney here seems as though that he's bringing it to them to make them prove whatever evidence that they have that they're holding to on this person to make him to seem like he's the villain and no one else has been brought forth. But I want to say this here to ask him, with all the cameras that we have, why is there only one video that is showing this young man and no other video is showing any of the other shooters? I mean, Christ, you could find them at the traffic light. Once somebody starts engaging in a gun battle, the first thing they do is get in their car to get away from the scene. But we have cameras that'll get video footage on a car and even to the license plate number. And you mean to tell me that we've had 30-some people get shot and there's no other video other than this young man?
All right. And let me tack on thank you, Smitty, for your question. Let me tack on another question for the attorney. That video, was it before or after he was shot? And I'll let you respond to Smitty's question and my question as well.
Okay, so I'll take your question first, Mr. Nelson. We don't know. It would appear that it was sometime before, but we don't know. There's no time or date stamp on the social media release video, so we simply don't know. Again, that goes back to the burden that the state must carry to prove their case. Now, in terms of what Smitty said, and good morning, Smitty, I appreciate your question. It was actually quite a good question. As I've referred to Mr. Nelson before, I know his audience is quite an intelligent one, and this is yet another example of that. The only video that we have, of course, is the video that, well, the entire world has seen, or at least the entire world has had the opportunity to see. Clearly, we know that there are CCTV cameras everywhere, so there's obviously additional footage, and we don't know what's on that footage, except to say that if there was something on that footage that would have shown this young man shooting anything, we clearly would have had charges indicating such. So the question becomes, what is it that the state has that they are going to bring forward in order to make this thing stick? Now, I have to tell you something, Mr. Nelson. I told you that we filed a motion to transfer jurisdiction. We also prayed a jury trial at the same time, which means that this action is going to go before a jury. This is just a little bit in the weeds. I hope that I'm not boring the audience, but what happens is this young man was charged with these gun crimes. They're all misdemeanors. Misdemeanors in the state of Maryland are tried in district court. District courts do not have juries. They only have a judge who sits as both judge and jury. When you pray a jury trial, you are able to get the action moved to the circuit court where it's a jury of your peers, the general public, okay? So there are certain what they call discovery rules in district court that are a bit loose that will allow in certain instances if something had not been provided in discovery for that to be offered into evidence actually at the trial in district court level. But in the circuit court, the rules are quite stringent. Whatever you did not provide in discovery, you cannot provide at trial. So we are pushing the state to the point where they are going to have to release every single thing they have before trial so that we know exactly what their case is and we can deal with their case one charge by one charge by one charge until we get this young man home.
All right, 26 away from the top of the hour. We got to take a break real soon, but real quickly, do you think it's that you're actually telling your game plan on the radio? Is that a good move?
we have got to get the public to understand that there's more than one story here. And to give away the game plan, it's no secret. We've said it clearly. We are challenging the state's evidence. The only way that this is a bad move is if what we're doing is trying to hide the ball. No, we want clear and open discovery. We want clear and open evidence. We want the public to know that what is happening is fair, honest, and open. No hiding, no running. We're facing it. Let's go.
All right, let's go and check the latest news, traffic, and weather in our different cities. We'll be back with attorney Michael Clinkscale. He's the represents the young man who was arrested in connection with a shooting in Baltimore, in the Brooklyn section of Baltimore. What are your thoughts? 800-450-7876 to speak to the attorney. We'll take your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. Also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And good morning again, family. 19 minutes away from the top of the hour with our guest, his attorney, Michael Clinkscale. He's a criminal defense attorney based in Baltimore, and one of his clients is the young man arrested in connection with the shooting on Brooklyn Day in Baltimore. Most of you know 30 people were wounded. 2 of those were fatalities. Before we go back to him, let me remind you, coming up later this morning, we're going to speak with motivational speaker and author, Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. But before we hear from Dr. Kimbrough, we're going to speak with former Green Party presidential candidate Matthew Ho. Is going to update us on Ukraine's bid to join NATO and more. And tomorrow, Doctor of Clinical Psychology, Dr. Jeff Menzies, will be here along with one of our griots, Professor James Small. So if you're in Baltimore, make sure your radio's locked in tight on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. Attorney Clinkscale, Sister Sabrina, calling from Washington, D.C., has a question for you. She's on line 2. Sister Sabrina, good morning.
Good morning, brothers. Hope everything is blessed and safe. A question. Understanding that with Brooklyn, the area of Brooklyn, is that not in Anne Arundel County? And also with Baltimore City, it is understood that there's a curfew that took place. The time frame of the shooting, from what I understand, according to media, that shows that it was at 12:30, and understanding that with your client, obviously, clearly, it's going to be a lesson learned because if there was no weapon, no gun, or whatever, then nothing would have been hopefully considered to be a suspect. But that time. And that area, that time and whatever, I understand that, yes, Brooklyn Days is very known for each year. But also with Baltimore, not Baltimore, Anne Arundel County, since Brooklyn is when it's just across the line, clearly that is in Anne Arundel County. What do they have to say about it? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sister Sabrina. Counselor?
Okay, so thank you, Sabrina, and good morning to you. Interesting question. So I'll take the Anne Arundel County question first. Brooklyn Homes, that is a neighborhood in Baltimore City, Maryland. It is not in Anne Arundel County. In terms of the curfew, yes, there is a curfew. It clearly was not enforced, but the Brooklyn Days Festival, as has already been highlighted, is a yearly event that's been taking place for a long time. Everyone knew about this. Everyone knows about this. There were flyers about this for a long time preceding this event. So this was a well-known event, and it should be added that though a well-known event, there was no police presence at this festival at all, a festival that was attended by as little as 700, but as many as 1,500 people. So there was no reason why there would not or should not have been at least some token at minimum police presence. But again, that did not occur. I wanted to touch on quickly the issue about lessons learned. At this point, the only evidence that we know to exist is what we've been talking about in this conversation, and that's the social media video. The young man turned his clothing over to the police, and so they have his clothing, and nothing has come of that. Whether there was chemical analysis for gunpowder residue or anything like that, certainly he's not been charged with any sort of shooting. So a lesson learned can be a lesson learned by the state and the authority figures in the city of Baltimore to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row when you are charged with protecting the public.
Now, let me ask you this: can anybody there point to him and say that they actually saw him do the shooting? Is anybody there can say, "Hey, yeah, he's the man"? Or do you know that, or do you think the district attorney has that evidence and so far not is sharing it with you yet?
Well, it certainly has not been shared with us. We are unaware of anyone saying they saw anything related to this young man engaged in any sort of shooting activity. It would be my surmise that if said witness existed, then he would have been charged with said offense.
And they still haven't found the weapon that was used.
That is correct.
And neither the weapon that your client had. Have they found that?
They've not found anything related to my client. The only thing they have are my client's clothes. My client was shot running away from the scene, and the very gray and white book bag they're talking about, when he was shot and went down, he lost that, and no one knows where that is at this point.
Gotcha. 13 away from the top there. Brother Hakeem's joined us. He's in Baltimore. He's got a question for you. He's on line 3. Brother Hakeem, you're on with Attorney Clinkscale.
Yes, sir. Good morning to you, Attorney. Well, first, I'll mention what Schellenberg, I know he is the Baltimore County, but two particular bills, Senate Bill 53, which is the Child Interrogation Protection Act, as well as the Juvenile Justice Reform Act. That's Senate Bill 691. What those deal with is how underage persons are not to be charged, or how, or if they desire to be, if the state can charge them, under what circumstances. But my particular question is, what do you see as a potential outcome? Because let's just objectively say, I mean, and you said it wasn't necessarily wise to go in a public place and, display any type of, look-alike gun, because that could, in fact, set off people could start running just from seeing someone with a gun. So, I mean, and I don't know if that's a actual charge, just like if you yell fire in a movie theater, et cetera. But do you see potentially and you mentioned that it's perhaps misdemeanors that, that there could be, I know you may not want to speculate, but that could be like something that you plead to say, okay, this is, that wasn't, you can't do things like that. I don't know if there's a law, but I mean, I think, honestly, it should be like a law to say that, you cannot go places and pull out fake guns. I mean, people do it all the time in places, but, is it like a serious crime? And it could be under, nighttime conditions, or, when there's a lot of people around, because don't nobody know who you are and what you're doing. So it could be a dangerous scenario that someone is laying out. So I'll just speak to that. And now also my next question, I'll close with this. Do you feel that this is overreach on behalf of the state's attorney to try to, is this politically motivated? Do you feel like that they overreached, if you will? And what would be your after this is over and you feel like your client has won and got 3, would you feel like you needed to off some type of apology or something to that extent. And I know that's a little far into it, but I just wanted to get your opinions on that. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for your question, Mr. Hakeem. Those were a series of very insightful questions. The first thing I want to do is thank you for filling me in on what Mr. Schellenberger actually said. I had no idea that he had said that, but whatever his commentary was related to those two issues, I'll look into that and see what the position is. I am familiar with both of those bills winding their way through the legislature. In terms of what our legal strategy is from the defense side, I certainly am not at liberty to discuss what the strategy is. I have no issue whatever talking about what some of the tactical moves are that we have made, but in terms of the strategy at trial or any potential negotiation or anything like that, I am not at liberty to discuss that. In terms of the illegality of these toy guns, well, there's no legislation dealing with toy guns. My client has been charged with crimes related to real guns, and to the extent that he did not have a real gun, then those charges cannot stand. On your issue of overreach and whether there was political motivation, I would defer to the state and whatever their rationale is for why they have brought these charges.
All right, 8 minutes away from the top of the hour. Thank you, Brother Haki. Let's go to line 4. Eric's calling us from Forestville. Eric, you're on with Attorney Clinkscale.
Good morning, Mr. Nelson. Good morning to your guest. I have a statement and a question for your attorney. First of all, I don't know why he is watering down the fact that his client had a toy gun. We know Tamir Rice had a toy gun. We've seen what happened to the Cleveland police did to him. We know that these guns that look like a gun, if you commit a robbery and it turns out to be a fake gun, that doesn't lessen the crime any less. So I don't know why he's making the public look like his client is any less innocent to bring a toy gun to an event like that. And that's my statement. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric. And I'll give him a chance to respond in a moment. We got to step aside and get caught up in the latest traffic and weather from our different cities. We're back, though, with Attorney Clinkscale right here in Baltimore in 4 minutes on 1010 WOLB. Also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. Keep rocking. Good morning again, family. A minute after the top of the hour with Attorney Michael Clinkscale. Michael Clinkscale represents a young man arrested in that mass shooting in Baltimore over the holiday weekend. 30 people, were wounded, and 2 of them fatalities. One of the wounded persons is actually his client. But before we get to him, just to remind you, momentarily we're going to speak with Matthew Ho. Matthew is a geopolitical analyst. We're going to talk about the Ukraine war and also talk some politics with Matthew. But let's wrap up with Attorney Clinkscale. Attorney Clinkscale, I'll let you respond to Eric's question about the toy gun.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Nelson, and thank you, Eric. That was an intelligent observation on your part in terms of what you're asking about with the toy gun and the various scenarios you alluded to in reference to saying. I will just say this. In the state of Maryland, it is not a crime to possess a toy gun. Gun crimes deal with actual guns. And to the extent that there was harm done by anyone, certainly no physical harm was caused by this young man. Again, this young man is a victim, just like the others. He is seeking justice, just like all of the other individuals and families who were harmed, and unfortunately for the 2 beloved that were killed in this event. We are seeking that those people who are responsible be brought to justice. It just so happens that this young man is not responsible.
All right, 2 after the top there. Troy's in Baltimore's got a quick question for you. Troy's on line 1. Troy, you're on with Attorney Clinkscale.
How you doing? How you brothers doing this morning? My question to you is this: I'm a retired police officer. Okay, I've been retired only 1 year. That sector right there is a sector that I used to patrol in. Okay, South Baltimore region. My question to you is: with a crowd that large like that, and we see what goes on in the city with these young brown and black African American men, okay, what him bringing a toy gun to a place like that, what message was he sending? Was he had a toy gun to scare off some people, or it was a toy gun to try to make himself look like, like, yeah, I'm ready for whatever? Because it's hard for me to believe that a toy would represent him. And your response to that.
Thanks, Troy.
Hey, thank you,
Counselor?
Troy, for your question. I will say this. I cannot tell you what was in the mind of this young man with that toy. What I can tell you is that he had a toy, but real injuries occurred. And from what I am gathering from the day of the event to this day, I hear very little talk of the actual guns that did actual harm in an actual event. I want the community to understand fully, and I'm sure that most of you understand far better than I do, that real injuries occur. What are we going to do to hold to account the people who actually committed this atrocity? This young man did not, but someone did. When are we going to get to the bottom of that?
Let me ask this: what's next up for him on the legal docket? What are you preparing to do? What's the next court date? What's up?
Well, we have no confirmed court dates on the agenda at this point. We have filed the motions and the prayer for a jury trial that I mentioned to you earlier. We are now in the position where we'll be waiting for responses to that from the state, and then we'll be moving forward on the docket that has been set up by the court. At that time, I will definitely be free to talk to you about what's actually happening and fill you in on what our steps will be accordingly.
All right. Are you going to try and get bail for this young man?
Well, we're going to take a second bite at the apple, as you already are familiar. He had an initial appearance where he was held without bail. He had a first bail review hearing where, of course, he was held without bail, and we certainly are going to proceed forward in an attempt to get him bail.
Right, because it's on the surface. The charges seem, I wouldn't say frivolous, but they're not as the charge. He hasn't been charged with murder. He hasn't been charged with the homicide, or he hasn't been charged with shooting the 30 people who got wounded. And the charges. Tell us again what the charges are, because it seems that people are thinking that he's the shooter. If they've had the evidence, they'd have charged him with that. Don't you think?
I do think. So I'll tell you again for your audience, this young man has been charged with 5 things. He's been charged with handgun possession by a minor. He's been charged with handgun on person. He's been charged with handgun in vehicle. He's been charged with assault weapon possession, and he's been charged with reckless endangerment. Note that he has not been charged with the discharge of a firearm. He has not been charged with attempted homicide. He has not been charged with homicide.
So even though he was shot himself at the incident, he's been locked up to make us, the public, because he's a threat to the general public. Is that what is that the case that's trying to tell the public?
Well, right now, he is being held without bond because he is considered to be a danger to the community. I want to add one point, Mr. Nelson. This young man has no prior criminal record whatsoever. The young man has not even received a ticket for jaywalking. He has no criminal past at all.
Wow, I think that's important. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, and thank you for taking up the fight for this young man, because it seems if the state, if they have more evidence, they'd have charged him with those crimes. And the worst part about it, the shooters are still out there, in my estimation, just from hearing what you said. I'm not sure what the rest of the audience thinks, but thank you for doing that, and hopefully he'll stay strong. You know, if he didn't do it, hopefully he'll be vindicated. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nelson, and thank you to your audience as well.
All right. That's attorney Michael Clinkscale. Keep us updated on what's going on.